there I was, this thing comes out, Lollapalooza. I put together Locopalooza. I do it for a few years. First year, 1,000 kids show up. Second year, 2,500. Third year, 4,500. I get a cease and desist order from Perry Farrell and James Addiction. It's all these lawyers' names on it saying,
"Is it framed on your wall?"
Yeah, we own the Palooza trademark. You can't use it anymore. So instead of crying, I went, Yahoo! I've made it. I'm getting sued. And I decided, well, I got to keep going on. This thing's got momentum. So I decided to change the name to something close enough, but would be my own, which was The Amazing. And this was the shirt for it. Of course, Benny has it. Locobazooka.
Hi, my name's Benny Goodman, and you're listening to 2020. We are a podcast because we're really a band, but we can't make money as a band. And I don't even know if we're making money as a podcast, but we're trying. So go to 2020-d.com and subscribe, because it's basically like me putting out my hand on the side of the street and saying, hey, I know you won't buy my music, but here's me yelling.
You can also buy a t-shirt with our faces on it, which is super weird, but that's pretty cool.
From Paul Lorenzo,
yeah.
Our drummer.
Yeah, right.
But all of that said, today is an episode with one of the craziest fucking people, as you just saw on that clip, on the planet. And I don't think there's much more that needs to be said other than this man is something. Dan Hartwell. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of 2020. And I actually introduced it this time. I feel like sometimes we don't do that. I'm Benny Goodman. I'm here with my cohorts as we've deemed it and trademarked it and lots of other things. It's patent pending. I'm here with Siobhán Cronin.
Hey, always full of hyperbole, Ben.
Hyperbole. Hyperbole is for horses and cows, just like hey. And then Cory Peza.
What's going on?
And then on our dais is an old dear friend of mine, and he's not old or dear, but he's a great guy. He actually was very integral in the Boston music scene as myself and Cory were growing up, but also is just an entrepreneur. He's a life coach, a health coach, like just a fucking nut, and I love him. Dan Hartwell.
Hey, what's happening? So happy to be here. So happy to be here. All right.
So just to give some people some background, Dan Hartwell, when I was growing up in Worcester, Massachusetts, listening to WAAF, which was the rock station, besides WBCN, put on a show, which I wore my shirt, actually. Locobazooka. Okay.
Look at that.
Which was originally Locopalooza, which we'll get into, but it was changed to Locobazooka for reasons Perry Farrell related because of Lollapalooza. But Dan gave where everyone wonders, like, is there a linear method to getting in front of people and being seen and being heard on the radio and all of that? Nowadays, it's not so clear. But when I was a teenager, there was a way to do it. And his name was Dan Hartwell. And he had this great methodology where he put on a giant festival with some of the biggest bands in the world and let local bands duke it out with their talent, with, building their business savvy. And basically, it was a battle of the bands constantly in Boston to see who can get on what stage at this festival. And if you got on and you got a good time slot and you really did your due diligence, you could have made money, you could sell your merch, you can get signed. I got signed. And play in front of 20,000 plus people at a time when the music industry was thriving, before Rome was burning. So you have to understand that Dan started something where it was basically, you have to buy tickets at a lower price to get on the show. But if you get on this show, one, if you sell your tickets, you'll make a lot of money. Two, you have a lot of opportunity to get exposure, which everyone knows exposure is a double-edged sword. But this is real exposure because, three, you have the potential to play in front of 20, 25,000 people. In fact, I have pictures of myself playing with crowds as far as the eye can see at Dan's festivals. So, Dan, how did this come about?
Hey, Well, geez, thanks for the big build up there. But, I was in a band myself early on. I had a stage named Danimal for years, as you know, Benny.
Well,
And-
didn't Van Halen write a song? Danimal!
Oh,
Danimal! I wasn't. You told me that when we saw Van Halen that David Lee Roth was singing that to us, and I believed
right
it.
on. He was. And there was a reason for that, and that's another story, too. I think he stole my girlfriend at one point.
Not surprising. He stole a lot of people's girlfriends, Dan.
Right, yeah. Well, when I was in a band, I was a pretty good promoter myself. First, I was a drummer, and it's funny because you had Steve Stevens on last time, correct?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we love Steve.
And Steve Stevens, I had met him in 1982. Just to give you a short story about that.
Did he look
And,
exactly the same?
I mean, he looks exactly the same.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly
Yeah.
the same. The hair, the hair, maybe it's a different shade of black now, like gone from like dark metal black to just like raven black. But it's pretty
Another
close.
person that doesn't age. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I met him, and of course I met Billy Idol, and Billy was on tour, and we were the only opening act, and I scored some pretty good gigs, and it was at EM Lowe's in Worcester, Massachusetts, and got to hang out with Billy and party pretty hard with him before he went on stage, and it was, I look back at it and I said, boy, that was such a freaky time. But Steve Stevens was a good guy back then also. But, I got some good gigs with them. I used to play with the Joe Perry Project, and I actually got to play with Jim Carroll Band at one point. Jim Carroll Band, legend. Those are people who died, right? Maybe we should do a cover of that today.
Maybe we should. I mean, it's all relevant. It's coming back around. It's kind of crazy how some of these songs now have a whole new meaning to them, and how these bands also, because of what they wrote so long ago, have been resurging because of the craziness of these times.
So the opportunity came around for me as I was transitioning from being a musician, a singer, a producer, into a promoter, where I ended up.
I feel like you were always a promoter, and that those were other things, but that first, just like a guy like Paul Geary, like maybe he was a drummer, but still always was like a manager first.
Always. When I was a kid, I was 8 years old, and we used to put on backyard carnivals and spook houses where we put boxes together, and I was putting up posters at 8 years old saying Carnival at Hartwell House, and people would be pitching dimes in the pie tin. If they got it in, they kept the dimes. If they missed, we kept them. But I felt an opportunity where I was booking some classic rock bands at a fishing game club, and cool bands like Blue Oyster Cult and Steppenwolf, Edgar Winter, Rick Derringer, and the classic bands that kind of went down. And it was around the late 80s and into 90. And
So this is like when those bands like were on their first down tick. Like this is not like their legacy acts now. This is like when they had fallen at the end of what was the time that everyone, we were just saying while you were off, that like, it's funny how many of these artists existed during that time. They're like, yeah, there was just cocaine in the 80s. And then it's like, you said that you partied with them, and it's like, what was going on? Can you tell us what was going on backstage? Because I know you're a healthy guy now, but what the hell was going on backstage with you, Billy Idol, and Steve Stevens? What type of shenanigans?
Well, I mean, I don't want to be the rat on them, but I think
do.
Let me just say this. I think, it was early 80s and everybody was doing the white powder. Everybody.
Powder. Yeah.
And it was, sad to see because there was a bunch of people walking around like this.
I walk around like that anyway.
Right.
That's your natural state, Ben.
Well, he's the one that actually came up with the term that I make coffee nervous. I use that all the time. And in fact,
he does.
He said you could use that, and I have used it. So thanks, Dan.
So anyway, it was 91 when Lollapalooza came out. And I said, oh, what a great idea. I'll put on a bunch of my local friends' bands, and I'll call it Locopalooza, as you mentioned. And so I did it the first year. I think the first year I had Sam Black Church, maybe
guys.
Headline, a great band back then. I had another local Worcester band, Bonehead. I had a reggae band called The Tribulations. A bunch of cool bands back then for the New England.
Sam Black Church in the kind of hardcore move, they're considered wholly underground band. So if you guys don't know who Sam Black Church is, maybe go YouTube, Google it, because they are a big deal, and it's whenever they've reformed, it's been quite crazy.
Yeah, they're kind of like the Fugazi of the East Coast, you would think.
I'd say that's a pretty accurate assessment.
Yeah. And so there I was, this thing comes out, Lollapalooza. I put together Locopalooza. I do it for a few years. First year, 1,000 kids show up. Second year, 2,500. Third year, 4,500. I get a cease and desist order from Perry Farrell and James Addiction. It's all these lawyers' names on it saying,
is it framed on your wall?
Yeah. We own the Palooza trademark. You can't use it anymore. So instead of crying, I went, Yahoo! I've made it. I'm getting sued. And I decided, well, I got to keep going on. This thing's got momentum. So I decided to change the name to something close enough, but would be my own, which was The Amazing. And this was the shirt for it. Of course, Benny has it. Locobazooka.
Okay.
And so thus Locobazooka comes out of the ashes. I send out press releases, and MTV carries it for a minute. Rolling Stone, Spin, and a few others. And I start to book it in Worcester, Massachusetts. And that's about the time that I met Benny.
So when you're putting together this festival, how did you find the bands, or what was your general idea of the structure of this sort of thing? Where did the idea of how to put this together come from?
Well, I was already doing these, what was called Danimals Jam Bashes, and I was running 3 or 4 different clubs already. And I was booking some of the bands.
You were like the nighttime mayor of Worcester, Massachusetts, which is where I'm from. But so everyone knows, remember when there used to be music scenes, Dan, and that people were culturally diverse in towns, and you can get bands, and there were lots of bands to choose from. And in fact, at one point, Worcester in particular, but Boston was a breeding ground for really good bands. You had Godsmack, you had Stained, obviously you have the classics like Aerosmith, The Cars, Boston themselves. But we had so many bands that when Dan was doing his thing, you could go to any club on a Thursday, a Friday, Saturday night and see at least one good band where you're like, holy crap. It's so different.
That seems like ancient history at this point.
Ancient history. Yeah. But when you were doing it, Dan was actually discovering bands. And you could I remember going to Locobazooka and seeing new bands and going, holy shit, I need to go check out Drop 360. You know what I mean? I need to go check out, whatever band at that time, because they'd be playing before Limp Bizkit or playing before Disturbed. And you're like, wow, they're really good. I can't believe that. And you gave people that forum, Dan. And in fact, you coached people. You helped the scene in a way where, again, you were booking nightclubs, but you also had friends in the news. You were all at every single concert, had people that were at the concerts you weren't at. So you were kind of the ubiquitous Kevin Bacon between all things music in Worcester, Massachusetts, to be able to create this perfect storm to put on one of the biggest festivals in New England, literally that's ever happened for what it is.
It really was the biggest ongoing rock festival in New England ever. Hopefully someday someone can duplicate it. I wish that, rock comes back in a big way and festivals come back in a bigger way. Anyway, the story goes where I had the opportunity to give young guys like you, Benny, and others the opportunity to get on stage. So I had to think of a way to be able to fund a way to put on these events so that I could bring in a stage from Canada and bring in real sound systems and rent an area to put it on, a public park. Eventually, we were shutting down airports, putting on big Locobazooka festivals in airports.
With Dimebag Darrell.
Right. And to think about
no big deal. Just closing down an airport, St. Dime, showing up, hey, Dad, getting your pull on, and then going on stage. Just happens. Just putting that out there.
Me to give the opportunity for some 16, 17-year-olds to be on stage at 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon in front of 20,000 people, playing in front of Shinedown and Disturbed and Stained and Godsmack and Alice Cooper and Black Sabbath with Dio singing, Heaven and Hell, on and on and on, all the bands that ended up playing. But
and on, it's heaven and hell.
But
it goes on and on.
I never had the opportunity when I was that young to play in front of those giant crowds. So I was able to give the opportunity to others.
So Dan, let's go back a little bit. So I'm sure I can say this because you look great. I know that you're like very well and healthy and you're always in great shape, and like, look at the hair. Like, it's pretty obvious. Like, and I don't even want to tell them how old you are. Like, it's crazy. Like, you really are like the dude. That's the example. But back in the day, you liked the crazy shit. Like, you liked to get fucking high, like really, really high. That's why they called you Danimal, dude. Cause it was like you, but on drugs. And when people came to Worcester, like Alice in Chains, right? Who partied with them? You!
Right. Well, Alice in Chains was opening for Van Halen, and they came, down from the stage and said, hey, we want someone to show us around town, and that's you. They ended up staying over my place and sleeping on the floor for a week. And
for a week. And I'll never forget Lane Staley. This was, early 90s, handing me a CD, which were new back then, saying, you got to listen to this. It's my friend's band, Nirvana. And
wow.
We were supposed to go see Pearl Jam at Lupo's Heartbreak Hotel in Rhode Island, but we're going to hang out and see your Halloween show, which I had put together, the Flying Danimal Brothers, and I was playing in 4 different clubs with an entourage of people following me around. And of course, Alice in Chains was there. So I had 2 limos with me and like 60 cars following me.
This is what I mean. You were the mayor of Worcester, dude, because every time I saw you anywhere, like there was another guy named Dickie Pilati. All right. And then there was Dan Hartwell. And whenever these guys showed up anywhere, everyone was like, kiss the ring. Like, you were the ring kisser guy. But you were always super nice. But like, I'd see you and you show up and you always looked good. You always had a beautiful woman by your side. And then like, you'd be getting out of a limo and everyone would be like, oh my God, Dan Hartwell's here. And it was kind of like smoke and like the Darth Vader walk. And then you'd come in and then and at some point, I got to a point where I felt cool, like where I had kissed the ring enough where you'd then be like, and here's a backstage pass.
Don't forget there was a famous Bruce Mittman. People were
I'm still friends with Bruce.
Of course.
Bruce,
great guy.
We had Ernie Bach on not too long ago, and Bruce and Ernie are like 2 peas in a pot.
So Ben, you derailed the conversation.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's what I do, Dan, by the way. I am known to derail. So Siobhán, why don't you put us back on?
No, feel free to pick up where you left off.
With Alice in Chains, they came out. I was on stage. I said, hey, I got some special guests here. And, no one really knew who they were yet. Man in the Box was just breaking. They got on stage, started playing, and Lane said, we can't sing this song without Danimal. And, I got it on video somewhere where, I'm singing Man in a Box.
Can you try to find it? Because we would love to roll it for B-roll. Because, Dan, you've been telling me about this since like 1999. I feel like I need to see it now.
1899.
Yeah, I know. Well, but you're being cryogenically frozen by like taking care of yourself, running on the beach every morning, proper fitness. Like, that's the other thing. So when I met Dan, he's like, I used to do drugs and all this crazy shit. I don't do any of that now. And like, he's always and every time I saw him, he'd just get bigger, and like, he'd be tan, like, and it just, but it's not because he's going in a tanning booth, because he's running at 5 o'clock in the morning on the beach, having a blast. And if you follow you on Facebook, I can't even keep up with you, dude. It's literally like you're just the happiest dude running down the beach in Florida telling people to stay healthy, but that's literally what you're doing.
Well, thank you. That is, my thing. I so much believe in health and wellness today and sharing that with everybody else. All my friends here say I'm a cross between Peter Pan and a vampire. And
probably like, pretty accurate.
Now I go back to, Boston and Worcester, and they're like, what happened to you? How come we look like great grandfathers and you don't? And I have to explain, listen, hey, I don't drink, I don't drug, I don't smoke, I run, I bike, I hike, I, do everything.
Psych.
Right? I dyke.
Yeah. In your mind. Me too. I
So-
go through that scenario all the time.
And I look at him and I say, here you are, sitting on the same bar stool with a Budweiser in one hand and a Marlboro in the other. But I mean, the thing is, it's time for everybody to understand health and wellness now anyway. I think it's a sad situation. We don't want to get into a big COVID story, but the whole thing of everyone wants to be healthy now because of COVID. How about being healthy anyway? Some of my best friends are the most wealthiest men in the graveyard. And they just never stopped drinking, drugging, smoking.
Yeah.
And so I did. Anyway, back to rock and roll. I've had a great career with it. Locobazooka blew up. I ended up doing it at the Tweeter Center, Great Woods, whatever it's called now. Had some great
It's always Great Woods, Dan. It will always be Great Woods. Fuck the Tweeter Center. Fuck whatever else they call the Bank of America. But it's literally the Tweeter Center and Harbor Lights. So that's what they are. I don't care. Or the Hat Shell, whatever. Fuck it.
Right. And so I moved on. I ended up selling, my entertainment company and got bought into by the third largest producer promoter at the time. Then he moved it, and some things happened with the event, which at that point I basically said, hey, that's cool. I'm going to go.
Well, can we talk about that for a second? Because I know the event you're talking about, because I always tell people when I refer to this event was when I think myself and a lot of people that were large in the music industry saw that Rome was burning, because you had a show put together called Rock the Ink that should have been a slam dunk. Like, you had great bands. It was like Godsmack and Seven Dust and Badfish and Bret Michaels when he was like at his height of popularity, and like just a lot of, and they had you got tattoo people like the guys from LA Inc. and a lot of people. Alex Gray, who did all the Tool covers, was there doing his Obama picture. He was there painting the Obama picture that like sold for like $10 jillion. Alex Gray was there hanging out, just chilling. And you did this festival, but it didn't sell very well. Like, it sold way less. And I remember everybody all of a sudden, like in the back room, going from everyone from like handing Joe Perry a backstage pass and being, here you go, sir, to hearing people yelling, going like, where's the money? Where are the people? Like, what happened? This is your fault. This is your fault. When the music industry just imploded and no one knew about it, and the dinosaurs are going, caw, caw.
Okay, Ben, well, let's let him tell the story. I got lost in the chronology
I'm setting it up
here.
because I didn't know if he was going to say it.
Setting it
That's
up.
how I perceived it.
It wasn't that one, but I ended up selling it to someone else, where really, at that point I changed my life and said I'm selling everything in Massachusetts, and I moved down to Florida. So once I got down to here in 2009, I said, all right, I'll put on another festival. And so I put on a festival, and Rome was burning, Benny, you're right. And I put it on with the biggest radio station here in South Florida, which was The Buzz. And they were a great station. They were a lot like WAAF. And as I'm putting this thing on, we had Mudvayne headlining and all these other great bands. It was a 2-day festival. You could camp. And it sold okay. And it was at a racetrack. But, I kind of looked and went, wow, I got away with this. We called it Loco Fest at that point. And it was hard to sell tickets. Now, right then in 2009, don't forget, the indicators for the worst economy ever were happening. 2008, 2009 was the worst. Luckily we came out with our shirts on. I'll take my shirt off. How's that?
Oh, yeah.
He's in shape. We were waiting for Paulie to do it again, but it took us to get to Dan Hartwell.
All right. So there I was.
There he
I didn't
was.
lose my shirt. All right. I didn't lose my shit either. And so, was able to put it on. But man, I took some years off. And like I did, I became a health coach and a positive living specialist, and really learned how to, share my positivity out there. But one day I'm out on the beach a few years ago now, about 5 years ago, and I never sleep during the day, ever. And somehow I went for a run down the beach. I usually run with 5-pound weights in my hands. And I pass out on the beach. I just lay down and say, I'm going to take a nap. Anyone out there ever have those dreams where it's kind of like a twilight during the day? It's a different type of dream.
That's pretty much all the time. My entire waking consciousness is kind of like a twilight. And Cory's glowing and like sparkling.
And so during this dream, twilight dream, John Lennon walks up to me and says, hello, mate. What's that? And he points at my iPhone. And I say, oh, John, it's an iPhone. And I start explaining technology today. And he's really interested. And I'm explaining technology to him. And it kind of fizzles out. And I wake up and this entire novel starts coming into my head. What if John Lennon, through time travel, could appear in today's world? And so I run into my home here on the beach. I'm on the beach now, okay? Run into my home and I start writing this novel. And lo and behold, I finish this novel and I'm able to publish it. I think Benny knows about this. And so I was able to publish St. John Lennon.
How long did it take you to write it? Like, how quickly did this happen?
It really took me about 2 years. I never wrote a book. And I hired someone to be my ghostwriter, which was this lovely woman, Roseanne Botone. I actually met her on the beach and became her health coach. And so she knew how to write and put things together right. And I was going to have her as my ghostwriter, but she did such a good job. I put her as my co-writer on the book, too. She's an awesome woman. Give her big credit. And so I write this book, what if John Lennon all of a sudden appears in 2020? What does he do? Of course,
he's in an Apple commercial because you're explaining an iPhone to him. So, like, of course, like if anybody's gonna get John Lennon, it's gonna be Apple, and then he's gonna be going, "Why is this only an iPhone 4? Like, don't you have the 20 at this point? Like, explain it to me, Dan." Except with his obviously nice English accent.
Well, you guys can give me some help on this because I'm still writing advanced stories of this. WWJD. What would John do? Huh? What would John Lennon do? All right? You like that one, huh? What would he do? Of course, he has a Beatles reunion. He goes on Bill Maher. He goes head to head against Hannity on Fox News. He meets with Trump, stops him from doing something, and there's so many different stories. But there's so many things. I think of things every day. If John Lennon... Does he strap
Yoko Ono to a tree when Trump is trying to, like, bulldoze it down? And then she just dies for the cause?
Think of it this way. If we could all time travel, what would we do? I was thinking today, if John Lennon was time traveling and he's, 100 years from now, and he's driving his space car out in space and he runs into David Bowie and they start fooling around. And David Bowie looks at him and sings, "Ground control to Major John."
Well, I mean, I feel like if he was in space, they'd clearly find Ace Frehley, the space ace, and they'd have to go meet up with Beth, and it would just be all over,
Right.
It's been a long time.
We could write more stories like that.
That is an original Locobazooka shirt. Like that's the bumper sticker that was on every car in Massachusetts. So people, if you're not on the YouTube Dan, Cory, is it fair to say
first they have to see him without the shirt, and then they have to see the shirt going on.
Is it fair to say, Cory and Siobhán, that Dan is still Danimal?
Got a vibe.
Yeah, well, you obviously look great, and are really into health. What prompted, going back a little bit, what prompted the move to Florida specifically? Was it because of your interest in like health, the outdoors, or was it some sort of business thing, or what was that all about?
Well, Siobhán, let me say you look great too.
Oh, thank you.
She works out every fucking day. I know. I've been down to where she is. She works out. She's like, "Oh, I'm just getting up to work out for the 17th time in the last 8 hours."
Oh my gosh, no, I'm not that extreme. Once a day.
Yeah, once a day. Today, I ran 5 miles down the beach with weights in my hands.
That's awesome.
At times, and I'll skip and I'll go to a gym on the next day and that type of thing. What made me move down here really was I met a gentleman in St. Bart's And he said, hey, come on down to Florida and visit, and come on down to my house on the Intercoastal. And I was visiting him until one day he said, you should get yourself a little condo down here at some point too. And one came up for sale, and I was able to get down here. And I live on a beautiful stretch of old A1A, not even A1A, old A1A, where there's no cars on the road. And
Yeah, that's awesome.
I feel like you just told me you lived in outer space, and I kind of believe that story more than living on 1A. Like, I thought you were hanging out with David Bowie and talking about ground control with John Lennon, and I was with you. I was following you. In your space car with John Lennon. Now, let me ask you, did they have right-hand drive or left-hand drive?
I believe it was a no drive.
So it drove, it's like a Tesla.
Yes, or beyond Tesla now, way beyond. So, think about what song would John sing back to him? Across the universe.
Oh, you mean like an actual Beatles song he'd sing across the universe? I feel like he'd probably sing Billie Eilish. I feel like John Lennon would still be in the know and would be like, fuck, nobody wants to hear that goddamn song I played a million fucking times. Why don't I do something cool? And he'd do something like Johnny Cash, where he'd be like, oh yeah, I'm covering Travis Scott. And then every Beatles fan would moan. And then he'd have like the number one song. He'd be like Billy Ray Cyrus with Lil Nas coming out with a whole line of books because he came out with a stupid song.
I think you're right. And Siobhán, to go back to you, Siobhán, once I got down here, I started, working on different things and consulting for other festivals and other bands and doing a little bit of, management here and there. It just kind of was dipping my toe in the water. Happening to write the book, St. John Lennon, I had the luck enough to get invited backstage by Ringo Starr. And, not only do I meet a Beatle, I give him my book that I write about a Beatle. So how bucket list is that?
Dan, you want to know how bucket list it is? Tell that to Bruce Mittman, because here's a true story I'm going to tell you that you'll appreciate, because Ernie Bach invited me to go see Ringo Starr. And I actually have a signed picture that Ringo did, because he's an artist, that he raised for charity. And I got to go walk into the Bach Center ahead of time, and we're getting to see like the Sgt. Pepper's jacket, and we're seeing all of his art. We're in there before everybody. And Bruce keeps going up to Ernie. He goes, dude, I got to meet Ringo. I got to meet Ringo. I got to meet Ringo.
Yeah.
I got to meet Ringo. I got to meet Ringo. I got to meet Ringo. And I said, I don't care. And I'm down there and I'm playing piano because they actually had a piano there. And I said, Ernie, can I play the piano? He goes, yeah, sure, whatever. So I'm playing piano, and then Ringo Starr walks in. He's got his fucking handlers and shit, and they all walk around, and he like strategically, oh yeah, he's got does this. And he looks surprisingly like perfect. He's in amazing shape. He's this little thing, like kind of sprites around, and then leaves. And then anyone who bought $5,000 worth of art got to take a picture. I bought $4,000 worth of art. Bruce bought $4,000 worth of art. So I said, Bruce, why don't we like combine our art and then tell them like, can we take half a picture? And he wasn't into this idea. He said, no, Ernie his name is on the building. He can get me in this picture. And I was never more excited to not be in a picture, because Ringo Starr, I don't care how big you think you are, if you're Johnny Depp, if you're the fucking president, Ringo Starr's on a different level. Bruce got nowhere near Ringo Starr. Nowhere near. And in fact, Ernie got so upset that apparently they banned him from the Bach Center for an entire year to let him know, you follow the rules with Ringo Starr.
Oh my God.
I believe Ernie Bach's quote was, he's had an easier time meeting the last 4 presidents than meeting Ringo Starr.
He didn't meet him.
Yep.
He literally came in, and Ringo Starr gave him the Mick Jagger treatment, where he you pay $50,000, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to make a peace sign in your area, and then walks off. And they're like, oh, you're in Metallica, and they don't even take a picture with you. That's a true story. Metallica are backstage waiting for $50,000 to meet, I think, Rolling Stones, and they didn't even recognize him or something. Maybe I'm making that up. I don't know.
I thought it was the coolest thing, because I actually went, I have a friend here, he's the drummer for Iron Maiden. His name is?
Nico McBrain! Clive Burr?
Nico lives right down the street here.
I gotta come hang out where you are. I'm in Miami, and there's no rock musicians there.
You're friends with Nico McBrain?
Nico took the picture of Ringo and I,
Shut up!
There we are hanging hanging, I always thought Todd is God. Okay. And there's Todd Rundgren hanging out, all of Ringo's band is there. And it was just so fun. And he took my book, he looks at it, and I explained it to him. He goes, yeah, that's a very cool premise. That's a great premise, And he was really nice about it. He was just a gentleman to me. So it was fun amazing. Because we got to spend a little time with him. And that was good. I probably, this should lead to this shirt. Wait a minute, I'm changing shirts again here.
Guys, tune into YouTube if you're not on YouTube right now. If you're not on YouTube.
Flex. All right, I will not flex.
He's just flexing that he was hanging out with Ringo. Ringo invited him. Bruce Mittman, are
he
you
won't
listening?
Physically flex.
Hey, is Mittman listening? Because he didn't get to meet him. I didn't know if you knew that.
I should put on my Beatles shirt if we're going to talk about a Beatle. So let me explain this. I'm on tour around the world. New York, Chicago, London, Sweden, Liverpool, and I'm going to Beatles festivals, signing and lecturing on my book. And I'm scratching my head going, what's wrong with this picture? Why are there no Beatles festivals in Florida? The demographic is great.
Well, there's so many cockroaches, it's unbelievable.
The weather is great, okay? And I look up at the sky and I go, okay, I'll do it. And so
was that Stu Sutcliffe from the grave yelling down at you, or was that John Lennon?
Probably a mixture of. It was.
Come on, give me some credit for knowing who Stu Sutcliffe was. Come on, a little bit.
Of course, it's pretty.
Is
good
he in your book?
Pretty good for your age.
Ben, we're never going to get to the end of this story.
Have you seen this show, Siobhán? You've been here for every moment of it.
So I ended up in 2019 putting on the first ever Beatles on the Beach Festival, where we take over all of Delray Beach and put on a massive Fab Four festival. It went over so well. I had a full orchestra playing Beatles music. I flew in Edgar Winter, he's part of Ringo's troupe for years. I have another story about Edgar Winter in a minute. Great guy, and I've known him since I was 11, okay? And so all the restaurants and all the bars get involved. We have Beatle bands from Brazil, the Brazilian Beatles, the Japanese Beatles, the Swedish Beatles, the Norwegian Beatles. They all fly in.
Was there like a battle of the Beatles bands?
It wasn't a battle.
Was there like a better George? Was like the George Harrison from Japan like getting mad at like the Swedish George Harrison?
Honestly, it was like this. It was that camaraderie of musicians and people loving each other, just going, this is freaking great, man. And a whole town turning into Beatleville. And everybody loved it. Completely sold out for the first year. Okay? This past year, I had it.
How many people were there, Dan? Because, I mean, 10, you put on 10,000 Beatle maniacs.
10,000 people. And it was outstanding. Ran for 4 days. Flew in Tony Bromwell, who was the CEO of Apple Records, to give lecturing. He did a great job. The guy who cut the Beatles' hair talked about cutting the Beatles' hair.
So let me ask you, how do you plan something like this? Because I'm curious, as a musician, a lot of musicians don't understand how to plan anything. We just know how to play music. So how did you structure, like putting on this festival from concept to reality?
It's a great question. So I had to, jump through some hoops. But I was experienced in that, Siobhán,
sure.
Where we were producing festivals in municipalities in the past, where I had to go to some of the politicians and ask them, hey, would you like to get involved? I think because I said the Beatles, I never ran into anybody that said, we don't like the Beatles. If I said, it's a hardcore rap fest, I think I would have turned down.
Interesting. Okay.
But I was able to go to each and every establishment and get them involved. So the city itself got excited, saying, with a ticket, you not only got to see the big bands at the pavilion, but you got to see all kinds of bands everywhere on the streets, in the bars. And if you went into the first bar, you get a free Beatle beer. The next place, you get a free Magical Mystery Margarita. The next place, a Strawberry Fields Forever.
So it's like a takeover of the whole town.
Right.
In essence, yeah.
The mini golf place completely outdid it and turned it into Magical Mystery Mini Golf.
So wait, if you were in second place at the mini golf place, would you be the Pete second best? Siobhán, that was the drummer for the Beatles before they kicked him out. And in fact, if you know about the Liverpool years, there was a lot of people that believed that because George in particular, but George and John were a little bit jealous of Pete Best because he was like the womanizer. He got all the chicks. Like there were girls that were showing up, that they fired him from the band because he was in the band for 2 years with the Beatles. And then Brian Epstein, being the heartless, soulless manager that knows I need to make this happen, says, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to get the clown that is Ringo. I'm going to bring that dude in. I'm going to kick this professional drummer out. Because they didn't get Ringo because he was good. Have you heard those records? It's not because he was like better than Pete Best, because Pete Best was a really freaking good drummer. But he got along with all of them. And that's what happened. But I thought that was really crazy to hear, because girls actually showed up in Liverpool with signs, even before all this was happening, saying how upset they were that Ringo was in the band.
Interesting.
Right, Dan?
So let me go, since you're mentioning Ringo again, let me go back to Edgar Winter, who played with Ringo for years. So
the Edgar Winter band.
Let me just say this. This is such an incredible story. I was 11 years old. My 2 older brothers decide to bring me to see my favorite band ever, the Edgar Winter Group. And Ronnie Montrose is on guitar with them, okay? And I'm like, I love Montrose. I love the Edgar Winter Group. Love the whole thing about it. Frankenstein had just come out. You know, they only come out at night. You know, Free Ride, all of it. I probably wore off that album. I'm 11 years old. It's Worcester Polytechnical Institute. They bring me to see him. There's an opening act called Ramatam. And you can look up Ramatam, okay? And I was a drummer.
Ram Jam. Black Betty, Bam the Lamb. Whoa, Black Betty, Bam the Lamb. Oh, that's Ram. It's Bamatam, but not Ram Jam. But not Black Betty, Bam the Lamb.
Listen, Black Betty is now banned. You can't even sing that song. I'm just bummed out that they're banning these things when it's just, you know, let it be in the past. We've learned from the past, and that's cool. And, you know, why would they actually ban Neil Young? Why? You know?
Or Bugs Bunny, dude.
For the song Southern Man, you can't play it. Listen, in my book, we are all one at all times. So let me go back to Edgar Winter.
Yes.
White.
Just for Siobhán, since you don't really care, Ben.
I always care.
He has his own monologue going the whole time. It's fine.
So there I am, 11 years old. Ramatam's playing, and the drummer is the drummer for Jimi Hendrix, Mitch Mitchell. Okay? They get off stage. A bunch of us kids, you can just go backstage back then. There's no security really. Okay? 1972. All right? A bunch of kids go back, and there's Mitch Mitchell. We meet him. He gives me a drumstick. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. You know, we go back out in front, and, you know, on comes Edgar Winter Group, you know, all glammed out, his giant cape. They just rocked it out unbelievably. I mean, they were just such a cool glam band, too, the Edgar Winter Group, and rocking. So they rocked it. And so there they are. They play their set. We go backstage again. Easily, there's Edgar. And he has a beer in his left hand, a Schlitz. And he's shaking every kid's hands. And he hands me a beer. Okay? That might be where it started. So he hands me a beer. And I run off with that beer. And I save that Schlitz can forever. Fast forward, 10, 20 years later, I book him at the Fish and Game Club. And I set up our trailer for him, and I go back and I say, is Edgar here? Yeah, he's inside. He's alone. Just go in. Go and have a great conversation. I tell him the story. You gave me a beer when I was 11. And he looks me in the eyes. He goes, I'm so sorry. I said, it's okay. I've been clean and sober now for 5-6 years. To this day, even this time when he came around, he looks at me, he goes, hey, he calls me Daniel. Daniel, still got that Schlitz can? So funny. But, I got to have this Beatles festival, did a great job with it. I'm going to be doing more with that. but I've, even moved on to doing more things. I believe in the unity of all of us. We are all one at all times. And damn it, I wish I could remember that at all times. When
are we talking in like a transcendental way? Are we talking in a Baruch Spinoza way? Are we talking in like a Leibniz way? Like what?
Like when you're this way, I have to remember I'm you. I am you and you are me.
So what is the one true thing? Or are we just modes of the one true thing?
One true thing is just, listen, when I get my ego up, I have to remember looking at a picture. A guy was putting on a seminar, and it was a picture the Hubble telescope took. And I looked down and went, look at all those planets. And he looked at me and he said, those aren't planets. Those are solar systems. So if my ego gets up, I have to remember I'm a speck on a speck on a speck on a speck on a speck infinity. Okay? I'm just like a speck.
For me, my super ego beat the shit out of my ego, and then my id just sit there like it is hanging out, and it was like, fuck this, smoke
Ben,
cigarette.
you're alienating all of our listeners
Sorry.
right now. I'm just kidding.
I thought that was a pretty funny super ego versus ego joke. Like, whatever, I was going to take it. Bring it back to Pearl Jam because he wrote a song called What Is It?
So to bring it back, you know what? I'll have to change my shirt back again.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
Tune back into YouTube right now.
I won't flex. And so
Cory does that actually a lot of shows, but he usually edits it out. But like, I think this time, Cory, you should keep it in.
What? Take my shirt
when
off?
you do this, you change shirts a lot of time in between
Constantly,
episodes.
Wow, there we go. Siobhán, Cory, I know Cory has questions too here. But Siobhán, since you're into health and wellness, one of the things I just believe in is helping people out, of course. So, I try my heck to do that all the time. And when I created United We Rock, it was years ago, and Benny was there.
Yep, right after 9/11.
9/11, and we basically said, wow, I got called by the radio station, WAAF, we love them, and they basically said, hey, Daniel, our headliner's canceled. What are you're going to cancel this, right? This was on a Tuesday, 9/11. Our show is on the weekend, Benny. And you're going to cancel. Disturbed canceled. Kitty canceled. Booyah canceled. All these bands canceled. I said, I'm not canceling. I still have like 50 bands playing. Are you nuts? Well, they're not going to let you have this. Well, we, went back and forth, and they said to me, Daniel, you get up here on the air and you tell our people, our audience, that you're not canceling. So I go up to the station, get up there, and I get on the microphone, and I say, hey, listen, people, we don't want them to win. We don't want them to shut down everything that we're doing here. I want everyone out there to show up with an American flag. Show your support, for our troops and our people and what we're doing. Rock and roll, doesn't die. United We Rock. And I dubbed it right there and, and started working it. And, it was 15,000 kids showed up with American flags. I said, if you want a refund, we'll give you a refund. 12 people asked for a refund.
Wow.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is during that time, I remember obviously because, we were going to play, my band was going to play, like everyone was looking forward to the show, and then 9/11 happens, and like, what do you say to that? And, there's a whole generation now that like wasn't alive.
I know that's amazing to think about.
Or that
yeah.
aware of what happened, where it's like I knew people and I have friends that were greatly impacted by it, and I remember exactly where I was. I know that Biohazard, one of the bands that came and played and saved the day, actually had an album, which we talked about with Dan Beck, that was scheduled to be released that day. In fact, Dream Theater had released a live album from New York with the Twin Towers on it burning that morning. So yeah, that when they had that concert for everybody, like the whole nation didn't know what to do. I mean, this was like the first crazy, like really, really horrific thing. Like, well, there's so many horrific things, but this was like, it stopped the world. So we needed music so badly then. So to think that not only this happened, but then, man, none of these bands get to play. We don't get to, like, a lot of bands, this was like the height of what we were ever going to do. You know, you're in a local band. This is the Al Bundy throwing the awesome touchdown. Like for a lot of these bands, you know, they get to play. So first off, all these bands canceled. But then we got Biohazard to step up. They came down because they're like, we'll get in a bus. We'll drive from New York. Henry Rollins, who's one of my favorite people on the planet, who's one of the greatest speakers, orators. He was like, and he talks about, you know, I go to war-torn countries. I walk around. I shake hands. He was like, I'm getting on a bus. I'm showing up. I'm going to go on stage. And I remember I actually tried to go say hello to him beforehand. And he was like stampeding around like a bull. And like, they're like, don't even look at Henry. Because like he has to get into like the Rollins band thing. Because I was like fascinated with his personality. But like the Rollins band and then the orator are two set. Like, it's like Dana Bana versus, you know, fucking the Hulk. So, but United We Rock really, I think in Boston saved a lot of people's sadness and like helped everyone come together because you just saw a sea of American flags. You saw people hugging each other and everyone was rocking. It was an amazing show where everyone got to rock. Everyone was psyched. We got to play local music, but also show camaraderie around Boston and for our armed forces. It was pretty freaking amazing.
And I've taken it to new levels now where I have so much energy now with what's happening. Okay.
There's more.
So much energy where, you know, right now I'm having some networking events with musicians, artists, businessmen, all kinds of people. I have some acoustic people playing. I do benefits and charities. This is during COVID. Okay. I've had 4 concerts so far during COVID that have had over 300 people at it. Okay. Certainly we are socially distanced and everyone has to wear a mask. Okay. But, you know, we do the best we can to put things on. But United We Rock is something that I really want to push forward, not just with music, but with humanity. We have to help each other and, you know, get involved, just like you're doing with your new project. And you guys are all in this project, and that just thrills me to death.
Cory, is that where you're supposed to put in the tag? Put in the tag. What is he talking about?
Are we talking about Lost Symphony now or the podcast?
Well, we should first off tell everyone to subscribe. So if you have not subscribed, if there's ever a time after Dan has ripped off his shirt and changed his shirt for a third time, if that's not enough to get you guys to call in and pledge to WGBH and keep fucking, you know, happy little trees happening.
The number of episodes that we have now produced and released, and this is the first time I believe we've ever asked anyone to subscribe to our show.
Yes.
So our marketing department will be thrilled.
And then we're in the band Lost Symphony, lostsymphony.com. In fact, by the time this comes out, we probably will have announced Chapter 3, which is going to be a tribute for our fallen friend and Viking and web-slinging Axeman, Ollie Herbert. Chapter 3, it's going to be ridiculous. And Siobhán, listen, you know, people are like, well, what are you guys going to do? Well, we just had Siobhán step it up. Because we keep
I
having
listened
her
to the
play on
mixes
things
today, so it's going to be
we'll
pretty
keep
cool.
having you play on things, and people are like, well, where are the violins? Because they don't realize what electric violin sounds like. And we're like, fine, whatever. So we put up the violins in this one.
Yes.
I want to see this violin player.
Well, you got to stay tuned for Chapter 3. Yeah, lostsymphony.com.
Plenty of content coming out over the coming months. But we're actually coming up with the end of our first hour here.
Well,
No, it was actually a great place to end. A really positive note.
Well,
This is the end.
Ben says I wear a lot of shirts, but honestly, I wear a lot of hats. Okay? That's what I wear, a lot of hats. A lot of hats, okay?
Did Robin Zander and Elton John
I wear
have
a
like
lot of hats.
come over to your house and get really fucked up on cocaine?
A lot of hats.
You know, I see the influence that you had on Ben.
I want to send everybody. What does Ben dress in drag also? Come on.
Only Tuesdays.
Come on.
If he had access to those hats, he'd be wearing them as well, I promise you.
United we rock forever, right, guys?
United we rock.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Dan Hartwell. You've been 2020. Stick around later this week. We're going to have Dan, and we're going to dive in even deeper into all the craziness. If you guys weren't sure where we are, we're fucking at Crazyville. You're welcome. 2020-d.com. Subscribe.
You know, I stroked out in my late 40s from all the fucking headbanging and shit. And literally had a stroke and was in the
Oh
hospital.
my gosh. Wow.
I did. And my doctors are like, you can't bang your head anymore like that and whatever, you know.
You rocked way too
So,
hard, man.
I was trying to, you know, put like sunglasses on stage because I'd just forget and start banging my
Sure,
head.
yeah, it's like muscle memory, of course, yeah.
I still do, by the way. And it turned out that I got a heart surgery. I had a hole in my heart. And that was allowing these blood clots to slip through. And then when a blood clot slips through and goes to your brain, like typically it goes through the 4 parts of your heart and it just dissipates the blood clot so that it doesn't go and hit your brain. If the blood clot gets through and hits your brain, it makes a stroke. Pow! So, you know, I was in my kitchen, bang! It's like, I thought it was home intrusion or something, you know, all of a sudden I felt like hit. Well, it was a stroke, man.